Are Manchester United fans about to get their joy back? Yes, domestically in the Premier League, it will be their worst Premier League campaign in history. Let's be real, they're quite bad, often dreadful. Though, pump the brakes, this can end as a good season for Manchester United if they, of course, win the Europa League, brings in a European trophy. A decent trophy, it really is. Like, it gets disrespected. Like, I'd rather win the Europa League than the Conference League. The League Cup, it depends how often or how recently my team won the FA Cup. But, like, it's great, the Europa League. And also, since the Conference, it's almost like elevated in prestige, right? Either way, it's a great trophy to win, and you get Champions League qualification, which brings all that money, which is so important, of course, for Manchester United. If there's one thing we're reminded of by Ineos head honcho, big dog, Jim Ratcliffe, is that Manchester United are in a rut. They're in a difficult situation financially in terms of navigating profit and sustainability rules. They need to sort out, hopefully they're hoping Villa qualify for the Champions League themselves, I guess, so they can buy Rashford. It's a crazy hay fever. I live out in the Surrey Hills, and the pollens, I've taken 2 hay fever tablets and it's not enough. Yes, so they're hoping Rashford does well and they trigger the £40 million clause. Of course, they're probably going to get £25 million for Sancho at Chelsea, unless Chelsea pay them £5 million to send him back, which would just represent a loan fee, I think. Antony as well, although they'll make a gargantuan loss on Antony. I think there is maybe a clause in his contract that he can be sold for 40 million, which is of course half the amount they bought him for, but he was worth nothing, before this loan, like literally like 15 million quid the way he was performing. So he's rebuilt his reputation, and others as well. There's other loanees that they could try and make some money from, like Tyrell Malacia, is that how you say it? The young fullback. So yeah, man, like look, they need to make money. Of course, if they finish in the Champions League by winning the Europa League, that will be a massive tick. But there's loads of transfer stories knocking about with some big names as well. Look, we need to remember, despite the fact how they're bad at the moment, they're still Manchester United. Players will remember. Even ones in their 20s will they remember when Man United were good? I'm not so sure. Their parents will tell them, this is a massive club. Yeah, the only issue is, even when they were like poor in the last decade, they'd still offer crazy wages, which I'm not sure they're going to do now under the stewardship of Sir Jim Ratcliffe, because they're trying to sort themselves out a little bit financially. Of course, they've made cuts all over the gaff across the whole club, and I think they're trying to stop, paying the likes of Casemiro and Varane £400,000 a week, just because it's like the failed mercenary Galactico model. So yeah, they're trying to look a little bit more sensibly financially, but they've got some big names linked to them. I'm just going to pull up some information now. Yeah, alrighty. Of course, we know Matheus Cunha, who is a really good footballer. He's 25, going to be 26 imminently, or is he going to be 27? I'll just confirm to you now. Either way, like he's entering / in his prime. Yes, he's 25. He will turn 26 at the end of the season. So he'll be 26 entering next campaign. Of course, Brazilian international, hothead, mentalist, fighter, problematic player, but to be honest, probably what Man United needs. Someone who will just hate losing, fight for the badge. Him and Bruno, I've already done a video about how I think him and Bruno Fernandes would be an excellent, inside number 10 duo in the Amorim system behind the striker. And yeah, like if it's those two and a new striker in a front three, they could be cooking. Now, of course, they will need certain other players. They've used like Amas, the young teenage wingback, bringing through. Of course, they bought Dorgu, who's let's be honest, very low profile, very inexpensive. But like, if there is like a position on the pitch where you can perhaps not go real big financially, it is wingbacks. I often say, my club Chelsea, we won the league under Conte. We converted Moises Caicedo, then Victor Moses into a league-winning right wing-back. And then we brought Alonso from Fiorentina, who's like a similar profile, because he played at Bolton as well previously. So I know he's a bit more senior, but similar profile to Dorgu. You don't need the big sexy names for wing-backs often. You just need functionality. Excuse me. And I think both of them could be, could represent that. I don't know why they don't go in for Ben Chilwell, but I've said that a million times, but I'll stop going on about that. But functionality in the attack. If they can find a way to systemically defend better in Amorim's system, and Amorim's still got great support by the Manchester United fan base, which is a massive credit to the United fans because they could so easily just be toxic all the time. Of course, they had that great moment in the game against Lyon when they won it in extra time, which was just freaking mental. I mean, as a rival fan, I was quite enjoying them going out. And then I found myself just like cheering for Man United towards the end because I just couldn't believe the turnaround and how exciting the game was. But quality-wise, like, Cunha's a massive signing. If they give him for 60 million or whatever, it's a lot of money, but he's worth it. He was always going to go for that much. So Cunha, Bruno Fernandes, it has to look. There's a story here on The Sun. So apologies for citing such a tabloid, or this type of tabloid. But they talk about Højlund, and Højlund does need to go. He's devoid of confidence. They massively overpaid for him, like an Antony or whatever. And he's regressed because it was a bad move for him. It was a bad decision. He was sort of doing okay at Atalanta as a sort of second choice, young up-and-coming striker. A few big high-profile clubs looked to him because of the profile, but when the money was spoken about, everyone backed off. Except Man United, who paid the money, and it was an awful decision for the club and the player. I do think Xerxes should stick around because he wasn't that much money and he looks like he can be a useful Premier League forward, but he shouldn't be a starter for Man United. And of course they are linked to new strikers, so if they find an exit or a landing place for Rasmus Højlund, then that's a start. And there's a story here on The Sun that they are going to try and do a swap deal with Atalanta that gives them Rasmus Højlund and sees them get Ademola Lookman. I'm just going to quickly check the contract situation for Lookman. Okay, so Lookman, 27 years old, in his prime now. He still feels like a youngster, doesn't he? Because he's gone away for a while. His current market value on transfer market is 60 million euros. His contract expires in 2027, so it's 2 years. 2 years plus, you can basically ask for a lot of money. He can play as his main position is a second striker, so it's not actually a striker. It's kind of like Xerxes, really. So you've got no true nines there. And he can play on both flanks as both wingers. I mean, he's an elite player. This season in Serie A, he's got 13 goals, 5 assists, and 27 appearances. But obviously, we've seen him score in all kinds of competitions. In the Champions League this season, in 7 appearances, he's got 5 goals and 2 assists. So that's 7 Champions League goal involvements in 7 games. And isn't he the current reigning African Player of the Year? Of course, won the European trophy at the expense of Bayer Leverkusen. He scored a hat-trick in a final. He's a very high-profile player. But he's not a striker, and they need a striker. So if they get a proper striker with Cunha and Fernandes behind, and of course the returning players like Ahmad, who was like the form player. He was like the form player for Ruben Amorim. And I know he's looked bad recently, but Mason Mount, in theory, fits the team very, very well. And a new goalkeeper. I'm reading Andre Onana is being linked with Saudi Arabia. Obviously, Bayendir, is that his name? The other geezer, he doesn't look good either. So you get a new goalkeeper, you get a striker. Of course, Liam Delap's been heavily linked, but apparently Chelsea still remain favourites to sign him. But, if Chelsea don't qualify for the Champions League, if Man United qualify for the Champions League through Europe, through the Europa, they'll have that edge. So there is still a chance. I think that is in his thinking. Because it's, more games at a higher level for him to prove himself. You've got to think about that as a footballer. Even a young footballer like Liam Delap. And Victor Osimhen. I say this, it seems unlikely because Man United have been poor for ages. And, again, wages. Yes, they've been playing silly. So 2 years ago, I would have been like, well, Victor Osimhen is clearly driven by money. To a degree here, because he would have joined Chelsea. Apparently he's a boyhood Chelsea fan. Drogba is his idol. You've got John Obi Mikel and Drogba going in his ear saying, go to Chelsea. But he didn't, because he didn't get his a massive wage demands. And 2 years ago, if he said that to me and Man United were in for him, I'd go, well, yeah, he's going to go to Man United. Because Man United look at Varane, Look at Casemiro. You know, there's other examples in recent years where they just pay massive amounts of money. I think Mason Mount's on like, you know, 250k a week there as well. So they'd pay. But now, under Ineos, with the cuts, I'm not sure they're going to just offer silly wages all the time. But I do want to mention it because I do, for reference to see where people are putting the money. I looked on Oddschecker for Victor Osimhen's next club, and the favourites are Manchester United, and then it's Juve, which is interesting because Napoli, I thought, didn't want them to go to any other rival Italian team. That was in a clause certainly for January, but maybe that's not the case for the summer. And then third favourites is any Saudi Arabia team, and then it's Chelsea afterwards. So that's where the money's being put at the moment. I'm not saying that's statistically exactly what's happening, but Man United are there. I think he's genuinely thinking about joining Man United, certainly as an option. Maybe Man United are going to put all the money into one player in terms of wages. And then, Cunha, they'll give decent wages, but they'll throw the bag at, an Osimhen, and then they'll try and utilise players on lower wages through the academy and just, trim the fat maybe. I'm speculating to a degree here, but these links, if you're a Manchester United fan, Lookman, Osimhen, Delap is, is very, very good. Cunha looks like it will get over the line. And then just generally a new goalkeeper, generally, that you'd have to think that's going to make Manchester United fans happy. Of course, if they don't win the Europa League and they finish 15th, 16th, they'll be miserable. But transfers can change the mood. So we'll see. Let me know what you think, guys. I follow all big footballing stories here on Football Yannick, so please do consider liking and subscribing. I think we're en route to 16,000 subscribers, which is great. So thank you for that. And I do hope to see you back here soon. Peace.